Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Sheena Mehta. I represent IE University, an international university in Spain.
My name is Sharon. I represent Jacobs University in Germany, and I'm also a former student of the university.
My name is Ikrone. I represent EHL, which is a hospitality management school in Switzerland.
I am Shika from Step by Step School, last minute drop-in, so doing my take here as the counselor.
And my name is David Hawkins. I'm an independent counsellor in the UK. One of my specialisms is helping students apply to universities in Europe.
Great, thank you. So, as you can see in the title, an introduction, the opportunities and alternative destinations. As I'm sure some of you have heard lots and lots of the same requests from students to the same places, traditional places where siblings, friends, families may have been. But our universities, and I'm sure Shika and David too, have been hearing a change in pattern over the last maybe 5 to 10 years. So what we'll do is try and keep this at a basic level. We obviously can't cover the whole of Europe, but we're here to give you a bit of a taster, and then we will leave time for questions as well to see how we can help you best. So the objectives of today's presentation. In terms of opportunities, I wanted to include my story. You heard some of it yesterday. I'm from the UK. I was born in Manchester. I grew up there, spent all of my life until high school there, where I decided, well, I'm going to be staying here, but my passion is business and it's Spanish. I was able to spend a year abroad in Spain, and I had no idea what to expect, and my university gave me a lot of training on, cultural awareness. Things are going to be different when you go to Spain. I actually ended up getting reverse culture shock because I missed everything that I saw in Spain when I came back home. So I wouldn't have known about that opportunity had my university not forced me to spend a year abroad. So I definitely wanted just to make sure that although my Indian roots are part of my culture, my British upbringing, Spain, when I talk about Spain, I still talk about it like it is home. So making sure that opportunities are available to students. Not every country or every university might be for them, but they won't know if it is or isn't unless they hear from it from all of you. The challenges. So we know that there are a lot of destinations that have a lot of prestige, that have a lot of name brand to it, and that's great. There are perfect universities in some cities and countries for students, but there are differences in each one, and we're here to introduce those today. And also to make sure that you are taking away that fear a little bit, that it's okay for you to suggest it. You can tell my story, and you'll hear other stories today as well. Different opinions and approaches. The same country, the same city, the same university, there will be different opinions and approaches to it. All of you are the ones who spend the most time with your students, so the only thing that we can do is to provide you with the information. If you think a student might be interested, that's when we come in. You can put us in contact with them. You can ask alumni to be put in contact with them. We can kind of step away from it, and you can let the conversation go from there. And the support available to you. So, Sharon, this is your first trip to India?
Yeah.
Great.
That's correct.
And Ikerne?
Oh, I think
17th? Wonderful. So universities are traveling out, and like IE, we have a local office right here in Mumbai. So Parshi, are you here? Okay. So just outside, we have representation in countries, sometimes representation who are traveling. So please feel free to reach out to us. And even if we're not traveling, we are an email or a phone call away. So I just really want to make sure that you know that you can call us, you can email us. We can't help all students. We're here to help you so that you can help more and more. So when we say your rope to Europe, it's not meant to be this kind of rope. It's meant to, this presentation is hopefully supposed to make you feel relieved when you walk out of here. It is a difficult pitch. It is a difficult, not difficult, but more of a new set of applications and things that you need to learn about. But we are here to help you with it. So it's meant to be a little bit more like this. We're here to walk you through it. And teamwork makes the dream work. So you've heard our team, you've heard what we're doing. The way that we've planned it this time is to have university representation, as well as a counsellor who's based here and who can tell you about the challenges, as well as somebody who is helping students worldwide and those trends and students here too. So I'm going to be sharing this presentation with you. You've got all of our contact details, everyone who's who's doing this presentation. The overview. So, this is me, right? Why consider English taught degrees in Europe? So, I told you all, I studied Spanish. When I was learning Spanish at high school, it was a British-based teacher who had also learned Spanish who was teaching me. So all of the mistakes that he was making were the ones that I was learning, and that's okay. When I was going to Spain, I was told your Spanish is good, you can hold a conversation, but it wasn't correct. When I went to Spain, some of the words that I was hearing don't even exist in the dictionary. It's that local connection that I wanted to make. So one of the things about studying English taught degrees in Europe, you can study a business degree, a law degree, an architecture degree, 100% in English, but because you are studying abroad, you get the opportunity to learn the local language of that country. You also get to learn the culture of those languages, of those countries. And companies that we keep speaking to are saying, if the whole world is globalized, so do your students need to be. If they're pitching their business ideas in one country to another, their pitch can't be the same, delivered in the same way from one country to another. So definitely a positive there. What options are available? There are growing options available. So in terms of where you can go, there are some universities that will offer 100% of their degrees in English, even though they might be not an Anglo-Saxon country. Or you might be going to a university that will offer part of the course in English or some of their degrees in English. So that's, again, something to consider. One of my friends did have a very good level of Spanish. She threw herself into the deep end. She struggled very, very much for the first 18 months of her university degree, but by the end she was completely fluent. So it also depends on the level that your students might have. What challenges do students face? Things like cultural differences, things like the fear of even making that decision before you even get there. So we're aware of that, but we're also here to say, let's look at this with fresh eyes and see what different opportunities we have.
Thank you. So I'm going to try and give you a little bit more flesh on some of this and the options that are available out there, and also a bit of history in there. I think one of the first things we should say as a disclaimer is when we have these other presentations at conferences such as IC3, you'll hear a session about Canada, a session about the UK, a session about the USA, and then we put in a session about Europe, whereas with Europe we're talking about a continent made up of many different countries, where with those other ones it's one country. So the representatives we have here today are going to give examples of their institutions, but we're not going to be able to cover every single country in Europe. It would be a panel of 40 odd different people, and you'd be here for about 6 hours. I know there are some representatives in the room from universities and countries that we won't touch on. Please forgive us for trying to keep this as a general level and to use some examples of what it can be like in different countries. But before we get into those specifics, I do want to kind of touch on some of the history and why people might consider studying in Europe, particularly an English taught degree in Europe. So this is a slide that a group called the European Universities Consortium uses a lot, and actually the 3 university members here are all part of the European Universities Consortium. Interestingly, I discovered relatively recently that there may actually be an Indian university that's older than any of these 4. But anyway, yeah. But taking that one out, beyond that, where was the first university in the world located outside of India? Anyone have a guess? It's Bologna. So Bologna, interesting. So actually older than Oxford, over than Boston. So actually the European higher education area has all the history to it, and you can guess also from the subtext of why this presentation is here and why we'd be answering that, where is the largest common higher education area in the world? It is actually in Europe. So it's not North America, it's not Australia. In terms of the largest common higher education area in the world, it is Europe, and that's actually a really important thing to bear in mind of when we think about the politics of Europe. And I'm saying this as a Brit, whereas the situation at the moment is slightly interesting with our relationship with quote-unquote Europe. But if we take the UK out of that at the moment, that actually within the European Union, the European Free Trade Area, the European Economic Area, different political bodies, we have a situation, you'll hear a bit more later, of free travel, of exchange of movements, of supranational governments, the European Commission, the European Union, things like the European Central Bank, the euro as a currency. And all those things which mean that you can fly into, say, Spain and travel completely freely through to Belgium, to use the same money, to have a lot of the same legal systems, the same trading things, that applies equally to higher education. So the importance of a common higher education area is that once you are within this area in Europe, there's transferability of things, there's a whole process of things, and you'll hear a bit more about that. So this is a really important thing as to why we can lump Europe together rather than having individual sessions in that way. So the answer is Europe. And then within this, how many countries do you think are actually part of this higher education area? Anyone want to have a go at shouting out an answer? 50? 45 or not? So these are your options. And it's 48. So it's a huge number of options there. Now, not all of these countries are offering degrees taught in English. As Sheena has already explained, there's a massive variety between a university which is an English-speaking university in a non-English-speaking country, a university which has these sort of 50-50 programs, or indeed a university that's entirely teaching in the native language with one program in English. And it's also worth pointing out, actually, that the UK is not the only English-speaking country in Europe as well. I'll touch on Ireland a bit later, but we have Malta and we have Cyprus, which also have significant and actually legal requirements of English being taught as well. So, to put a bit more flesh on that, we're going to delve into a bit more of the detail.
Okay, so why considering an English taught degree in Europe? Since 1999, so since the Bologna agreements arrived, we have gone through a little bit of a revolution and things have changed a lot in Europe. To give you a little bit of an idea, in 2001, postgraduate program, there were 700 programs. Nowadays, there's more than 9,000 programs taught in English for postgraduate. For undergraduate program, 10 years ago, there were about 500 programs taught in English. Today, there's more than 5,000 in Europe. So you see 10 times more in 10 years. So it's really a revolution. So we see that all the institutions are going through an internalization of really inside to have a more international student body. So why that? So one of the advantages or objective is, as Sheena was mentioning before, I mean, the world is changing and it's global. We need to prepare our students for a global world and not only for example, Switzerland, being in Lausanne, speaking French, nice, but then in terms of job opportunities, it can be a little bit tight. So prepare them for a global world, for more job opportunities. We want to attract as well more international talents. I mean, if we don't have English as a medium of instruction, we only have our local students. So attract international talents, remain competitive as well. So this is a little bit the reason why we are going through this internalization, and it's really a need that the students want now. Students want to travel, want to discover, want to move. We want mobility. When I was rehearsing this morning in my room, I said, okay, I've mentioned about 25 times mobility. I have to change it. But it's true that mobility has become something very, very important. So the European higher education, so as David mentioned, 48 countries at the moment. We have created this agreement. The first objective was coherence, like understanding of the education area. Now in Europe, we have 3 cycles: bachelor, master's, doctorate. If I say 3 + 2, everybody will understand in Europe what I mean. So we all speak the same language, and it makes the world really much easier. In terms of recognitions, you have a bachelor degree in any of our country, you go somewhere else, you don't need to spend half an hour to explain what kind of degree it is. It's quick, it's recognized. In terms of mobility, we have credits. So in US, you have the US credits, and we have ECTS credits that are all the same among Europe, and that helps as well. You want to do a semester abroad, you need X amount of credits, that's it, it's easy, really. One thing that is important as well, quality of education. So imagine there are 48 countries discussing with each other, sharing best practices. So at the end of the world, it creates a little bit a healthy competition because everyone wants to share the best practice. So the result was that it raises the bar and it raises the level of the quality throughout Europe. And the last comment that I would like to mention about this, it creates a very good dialogue between the higher area institution, the Ministry of Education of each of our countries, and some international organizations. So you can see that a little bit of a triangle. So our Ministry of Education, now they are really confronted with our reality, our challenges, and they really understand what's going on. And then we have international organizations such as, for example, EAIE, which is the European Association for International Education, who supports as well this triangle with giving training. They do have an annual conference as well every year, like AC3. So it creates a dialogue between these three poles, and it helps raising the bar as well. I think I've covered that all. Benefits. So I went through the benefits already, the recognition, the comprehension, the mobility, the credits, the job opportunities. I mean, the possibility to have an internship in a different country, to have a job offer for a different country as well. So these are all the benefits. I want to mention something with this slide. The World Economic Forum, they did a survey about the job of the future. And they put the top 10 competences that will be necessary to our future students in 2020. The same survey was done in 2005. So there are two competences that have changed. Not saying that they're not important anymore, but they're not in the top 10 anymore. As quality control is not on the top 10 anymore, and active listening. I believe it's still important to listen, but they have been replaced by emotional intelligence and cognitive flexibility. Apart from this, you have creativity, you have problem solving, people management, etc. I really believe studying in an English program, in a European country, in a non-English taught country, will help you to develop, will help the students to develop these soft skills. They will need to adapt to another education culture. They will need to adapt to another country culture. They will need to be confronted with different opinions from students, from teachers. And then not maybe sit in class, but in everyday real life, they will acquire these soft skills that are very important for the job of the future. So advantages. So I went through a lot. Traveling is one. David was mentioning, you get a visa, you have a Schengen visa, you can go all over Europe freely. Switzerland, by the way, is a bit of an island in the center of Europe, but it's part of the Schengen visa. So you can take a boat in Lausanne, navigate for 20 minutes, and have a bottle of Evian in the city of Evian in France, which is just in front of the lake. You can take your flight at 8 o'clock in the morning, going to Madrid, do great shopping, come back in the evening. So, yeah, really, I can see the experience with the students at EHL. I mean, every weekend they discover another city in Europe. So this is really an advantage. Languages. I mean, there are a lot of languages. Every day you walk around, you hear a lot of languages. So that makes the things easier. The possibility to work in different countries in Europe, to discover the culture, the history, the food. We have Italy with the best pasta. We have Spain with fantastic food, France. So gastronomy in Europe is absolutely great. And of course, the quality of the education and the recognition. So we're going to give you a few examples of the countries that we do represent today. So I will start my own with Switzerland, and then Sheena will take over with Spain, and this is the country that we will present. Again, we only have 1 hour. There's a lot of other countries in Europe. Some of our explanation are for all Europe and some are specific per country. As Sheena was mentioning, do not hesitate to contact us if you have any specific questions at the end. We'll try to answer the best as we can. So Switzerland. So you know the cheese, the chocolate, Roger Federer, the Bollywood movies that were done in Switzerland. So Switzerland is 80 times smaller than India. It's only 8 million people, so it's a third of the population of Mumbai. And this is our own country. So it's a tiny country, but we do have 4 official languages. We have borders with 5 different countries. It can seem a little bit small, but we have very vibrant city, Lausanne, Geneva, Zurich, lots of cultural shows happening. We won the best innovative country in the world a couple of years ago. So there are things happening. 20% of our students, overall students, are international students. So every year we have more and more international students. Coming more about the academics. So I said we have 4 national languages, but only we have 3 of them bachelor so we have Italian, German, and French. The Romanche, which is the Swiss language, is not given as an undergraduate level, and English. By the way, I've done some research, and throughout Europe, the Turkey is number 1 in the number of English program given, followed by the Netherlands, and number 3 is Spain, in terms of number. Switzerland, we have the number 1 in terms of percentage. So with all the higher institutions that we have, in terms of percentage of program taught in English, Switzerland is number 1. There's a big difference, and that is not only for Switzerland, but for everywhere. You have public universities and private universities. So in Switzerland, for example, public, 2 big differences. One is the price. So public universities are usually much cheaper, but the quality can be much higher in a public university than in a private university. So public university in Switzerland has a very high level. But the fees are $1,000 per year are fixed by the government. And the second big difference is the admission selection process. If you are Swiss, or maybe not Swiss, you apply to a public university, you are in. As soon as you have your high school diploma, you're in. Nobody can tell you no. However, the first year, maybe you have 70% failure. This is how they select. This is specifically for law. We do that a lot. Private university, they are a bit more expensive. They don't want you to spend 1 year paying a lot of money and then blah, 70%, ciao. No. So we do have a selection process and we do the filter before. So this is one of the big differences as well between public and private. Cost of living, well, this is not the best marketing speech for Switzerland. This is probably not the cheapest country to live in the world. So here you have $1,500 US per month. That does not include accommodation. We have a clear distinction between University of Applied Science and a research university. So basically in Switzerland you have, and in other European countries as well, subject that you can have in both. You can study in a research business, in a research university, or applied science. As the word said, in applied science you apply more. So you will have maybe more internship. You will have a lot more projects, presentation in class. Usually classes are a bit smaller as well. So it really depends on the profile of the person, of the student. You think, okay, he will benefit more for an applied science curriculum or for more a research, really academic stream. So this really depends. Some of the subjects are only taught in research university, for example, such as medicine. And then, but that won't help you a lot. Unfortunately, we don't have something like the Common App in Europe. It's really specific. Each country and each institution will have its own application deadline, its own admissions process, selection process. So it's really one by one. And again, do not hesitate to contact us if you have any problem. For Switzerland, we just have one rule that is the same for India. This is not an institution requirement, it's a country. All Indian students, so so Indian passports living in India or abroad, since 2016, they have to submit an IELTS with a minimum of 6 to obtain their visa. Even if they have studied in English all their life, even if they have the best score in IB, whatever, they need to submit an IELTS. So that's the same rule for everyone, Indian students all over the world. That applies for Switzerland. No? Then for the others, I'm not sure. I think it's only for Switzerland. That's it. I think I'm done with my information. Sheena.
Okay, so Spain, it's beautiful. I found a home there, but there is architecture, there are the mountains, within an hour's drive you can also be by the beach. The food is pretty spectacular. And we're all talking about opportunities for students that they get to go to these different places. I put a lot of responsibility on you guys, sending your students abroad so that people there can know about their culture. That's kind of what happened to me. In Spain, I was a bit of a rock star walking down the street. It wasn't something that the people there were seeing every day, but they were having Holi parties every year. And they would all have bags with Shah Rukh Khan's face on it. So they were into the whole world of Bollywood, but they didn't understand what the context of it. They would go to Indian restaurants and think it was the best food ever. I didn't find a great Indian restaurant while I was there, but they need to know that, okay, this is not traditional food. So it's a lot of work that you're doing to also bring the culture of your students to these places too. 85 Spanish universities to date, 500 courses taught wholly or partly in Spanish. And that's, again, what we keep repeating. It's key. IE University is one of the universities that offers all of their programs in English, and it is one of the fewer ones. But if your students have a good level of Spanish, maybe they want to go somewhere that's teaching a lot more in Spanish. 2/3 are run by the state, only 1/3 are private. The tuition fees can range, and I have put them here in dollars, all the way from $1,000 up to $25,000. One question to also make sure when you're approaching new universities is about their accreditations. Are they offering private degrees, or are they offering official degrees through the Ministry of Education? There are universities that are offering official degrees but awarded by themselves rather than the Ministry of Education. We do follow the European credit transfer system. So actually, in theory, if somebody went to Jacobs University and wanted to transfer to IE or vice versa, their credits would allow them to do that. And Gerna touched on the setup of having three years, for example, in the UK, going on to do a master's, or the 3+2 that you've heard about. You will also hear the 4+1, which is more common in Europe. The local approach or the national lead, Spanish or English. So again, touching back on what we were saying, bringing your culture, but also the setting that you're in. At IE, you could be in a classroom with many international students. So although you're in Spain, you've got the whole world at your fingertips. What kind of setup do your students want? What are they looking for? Are they going to Spain to learn about Spanish? Are they going to Spain to make sure that they're more open to the whole world? Keep in mind, law, for example, has been very traditional for many years. You go to a certain country, you learn about that legal system. At IE, what we're doing is students have access to the UK, they have access to the US, and I'm proud to say that students, Indian nationals, can come study at IE in Spain and be able to practice in India. Through the Bar Council in India, our program has been accredited. Netherlands.
Hi. Part of the reason I was roped into this was I have an increasing number of students wanting to apply to Europe, and I'm sure a lot of you face the same trend. I was lucky enough to have visited IE and see how students get immersed, but today I'm representing Netherlands, and Denise will kill me. She's out there if you have any further questions. Denise, please feel free to chime in. So I'm going to keep this brief. We have 13 public universities and 45 University of Applied Sciences. We have a slide next on public universities and applied sciences, but I think she covered it already. One is not better for the other, it's how suited it is for your student. You have to look at that, you know. There are limited private options. I have looked up a lot of websites for Netherlands. Three of my students are studying there, and there are many courses, 300 it lists here. I'm sure it's growing, offered in English. You can see the non-EU tuition free. It ranges from 6,000 to 15,000 euros. And I have a friend here who's a university representative whose son studies in a university at Netherlands, and she told me the reason that she took that up was because it was so affordable for him. So just want to reiterate that, yes, the cost of living, Denise, people are going to come back to you after this, is not cheap like she said, but it's doable. It depends on how many life skills I think you teach your student. If they're going to manage it, it's pretty doable. So I'm going to reiterate that. It says 900 per month, but it can go up depending on how frugal or non-frugal the child is. Deadlines are different. Mostly, there is like a distinction between the University of Applied Sciences and the Research University. I said that we'll cover that. My kids apply to StudiLink, and there is a cap of 4, and there has been a lot of debate on that, but yes, the cap of 4 stands, also because we want to teach our kids the ethics and the fact that we need to limit it. These are some great resources. You may want to click on it, or I'm sure the slides are available. I go to the studyinholland.nl website very often to look at courses for my students, so that's something that you may want to touch on. This is a quick slide, a quick reference for University of Applied Sciences as research. I just want to say, in the end, though it lists nursing, physiotherapy, but kids do go for international business and all also. It depends on whether the kids wants to really get into working immediately after. That's more their flavor than getting into research or pursuing a master's. I know that there is a caveat for doing a master's. Chairman, if you want to do it after your University of Applied Sciences, you have to do one additional year to be able to get into the research university. That's the thing that you need to keep in point, because I know a lot of Indian students in particular want to do their masters. Their education doesn't stop at that.
Germany, that's me. So just to give you a bit of context about my background, because I think it's somewhat relevant here. I am originally from Yangon, Myanmar, and I also studied at Jacobs. So I took the non-traditional step, as you guys might describe it. I was preparing my entire life to go study abroad in the US, which is why my English sounds like this. But I actually chose to go to Germany because it was a much more affordable option with just like much more international, option. So I also have a lot of experiences in like personal experiences in terms of that. But Germany as a country, this is Munich, I believe. I'm not really 100% sure about those pictures, but as a country, we're also, gastronomically speaking, we're not as impressive as Spain or France or whatever. We have potatoes, we have bratwurst, and we have beer. But if you're a meat eater who likes beer, then I guess you're in for a treat. But of course, we also have, a lot of other restaurants. So, it's not like you go to Germany, you starve. But as an Asian student, spices are very important for us. Just to give you a quick picture, obviously, as my colleagues have reiterated time and time again, the public university systems are different than the private universities. So a lot of undergraduate programs in Germany are still being offered. There are more offers in English in private universities, I believe. There are a growing number of public universities that are also starting to offer English programs. And I think currently there are about 200 bachelor programs that are offered in English from a mix of private and public universities. But there are quite a lot of master's programs that are offered in English. So this is something that a lot of our graduates also choose to pursue. They go to Jacobs at the undergraduate level, and then they do their master's at a German public university. So for example, my university actually does offer a broad range of programs, but the private universities offer more management-oriented or sort of, these kinds of programs in English. Public universities are virtually tuition-free, except for the universities in the state of Baden-Württemberg. I think they charge about 1,500 euros per year. Still comparatively very cheap. But of course, you also have to consider, even if you go to a public university, there's the cost of living. So this could vary from each city or state. Obviously, if you go to a place like Munich, cost of living is going to be extremely high. Munich is actually one of the most expensive cities to live in Germany. But if you go to a place like Aachen, which has very strong STEM programs, it's going to be cheaper. And there's also, I mean, clear distinction between the application processes and the documents that they require and so on and so forth between public and private universities. But I mean, it doesn't mean that the quality is any different really. It's more about what your students are suited for and what they're interested in. Of course, in Germany, a lot of the programs are, still taught in German. So if you want to go to a public university, you have to be ready to, do everything in German, which usually requires realistically a level of C1 in German. And the applications are for each program, unfortunately, like in Switzerland. There is a website called uniassist.de, which actually helps with the document checking for international students for public universities. But for example, Jacobs is on the Common App at the very least, so we have that going for us. But in public university, it's also an application towards a specific program. So once you get into the program, it's not like you can change your major or anything like this. So the application processes are also very specific. I actually basically just breezed through that. I think next is Ireland, yes.
So I'm not Irish, but I'm a huge fan of Irish universities, and so just going to touch on that a little bit. And to reiterate what I said at the start, that we're talking about studying in Europe, and people tend to go, well, there's the UK and there's continental Europe, and really want to flag up the fact that Ireland is an option for your students who may actually find the idea of even going to a university like some of the ones here, where everything is in English, not just the course, but the administration, helping you with your visas, helping you find accommodation. They may still find that being in a country where as soon as I step outside the university, it's another language. That could be something that makes them a bit fearful. So there are still options to study in Europe, in countries where English is spoken by everybody. We've touched on the Netherlands here, and I would flag up that actually the Netherlands is, to all intents and purposes, an English-speaking country as well. But even if that's still too much, then we've got Ireland, and I touched on also Cyprus and Malta, where they are English-speaking countries. English is a national language. The administration, the government, if worse comes to worse and you're having to deal with a governmental authority and you turn up in an office, you know it's going to happen in English. You're not going to need a translator or anything as well. And I often think that Ireland is almost the hidden gem of European education in terms of people tend to forget it's there. I'm going to talk about the Republic of Ireland, just for clarity, if anyone's familiar with UK politics. Northern Ireland is part of the UK and therefore is part of the UCAS system. So this is very much touching on the Republic of Ireland on the island of Ireland. It gets a bit complicated. And also for clarity's sake, with Brexit, Ireland is remaining part of the European Union, so the things that you've heard about the credits, about the European higher education area, will still apply to Ireland. So it's often overlooked, I think, by people looking for this English language programme in Europe. I know that Education Ireland and Trinity College Dublin have done a huge amount here, but it's important to emphasise, particularly in working with your students, that until just over 100 odd years ago, Ireland was part of the UK. And when we talk about Oxford and Cambridge and St Andrews and Edinburgh, Irish universities are as ancient and as old as those ones are. The quality is there. So if you are looking for that level of reputation and prestige and brand value, then Ireland has some great options in there. A crucial distinction to make is also the fact that there is a massive difference, and it's something that actually will come into some other countries, between the passport that your students hold. Most of the time we're assuming that you might be working with students who are non-EU, but if you have a student who holds an EU passport, or in some cases residency, that could make some changes in certain universities. In Ireland, it's going to make a massive difference. If a student has an EU passport, and this is not something that they can choose, oh, I have both and I'll apply with this one. If they have an EU passport, they are EU. They're going to have to then go through an equivalency to the Irish Leaving Certificate and go through the Central Irish Applications Office, which is going to be a little complicated in terms of how you work out those equivalencies. And you're going to go through a central process with a January deadline, with a change of mind thing in May, and then replies coming out actually in late August. Actually, if you have students applying non-EU, you'll be applying directly to the universities with clear entry requirements set for students with US curriculum, with IB curriculum, with Indian curriculum, and so forth. That's a much more straightforward process. However, EU students are going to be actually paying very, very little. And international students are going to be paying more, not huge amounts more. It, again, depends on the program, depends on the university. Medicine, clearly very expensive. English literature and history, less expensive, and sort of things in between. And so there's important factors to come in there as well. The final thing on Ireland, and we keep repeating the same thing, is this difference, which you don't get in UK and in USA and places, is between this University of Applied Science and this Research University thing. In Ireland, that's the difference between what they call level 8 and level 7. So a level 8 would be historically your Research University course, with the level 7 course would be your Applied Science course. And that level system is to do with kind of primary education, going through to secondary education, going to tertiary education. So students have maybe done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 before they go to university, and maybe year 7, depending on what courses they did in the Irish Leaving Certificate. Some great websites on there. The CAO is actually probably your best starting point for course search. You can type in the situation in there, and it will give you some options you can look at. Unibrowse.ie is also a good searching point, particularly if you don't quite understand some of the codes that Irish universities use to search for courses as well. That, and I will just touch on very briefly, I said them a few times, but if you have got students who are determined to look for English-speaking programs in an English-speaking country, please do get them to look at places like the University of Nicosia in Cyprus, to look at options in Malta as well. Significantly smaller countries. The universities don't have the resources to travel and do outreach and those kind of things, but some really good cut-price deals for students there. And actually, particularly in Malta, there are some universities which have partnership agreements with UK universities. So, for example, St George's University in London are delivering their medical programme also on Malta. So there are some interesting options there for students who are looking to do something slightly different in an English-speaking country. Okay.
Thank you.
So you have the smallest overview and in the quickest way that we've been able to give it to you. And we have missed out a lot of countries and a lot of information. But again, we're here to help you with that. What we're going to do at this point is go to our counsellors, go to our independent counsellors, our school counsellor, and say, ask you both, what kind of things do you hear from students? What is their fear? What is their mindset when applying to Europe? What is their approach right now?
So the first thing that I hear is language. You know, I'm not going to be able to speak. How typically parents, ma'am, how are they going to be able to speak outside the university? Having visited a European university where the city I went to IE, and primarily I don't speak any Spanish, good or bad British. I didn't learn any Spanish, but I was helped. And if a student at that age wants to learn, I of course was completely in English. There was no language barriers there. I think it's a good skill to have in this day and age, to pick up a language, you know, which is maybe not your own. It's a good idea. I mean, you don't only have to send Spanish-speaking kids to a Spanish university. You know, you can send other people who are good in other languages also and pick that up. I didn't find it to be a barrier, but that's a typical barrier and concern that parents have. Food is another major concern that parents have. But then, you know, at that age and that point, I think we're in a multicultural era, literally. You know, you find all sorts of cuisines everywhere.
Thank you.
I would say something we've touched on a bit on here, but I think something that sometimes students can get themselves into difficulty with is not really understanding this difference between public and private and what the mission of that university is. A lot of the public university systems in many European countries, not all but many, are based on this tradition of access. That if you have been to an academic high school, whether that's in the French system, in the Swiss system, the German system, and your family have been paying tax in that country, you have an automatic right to go to your local university. And in some European countries, they don't have a sense of the fact that, you know, from our high school of 100 kids graduating, we're going to go to 40 different universities. It can be the case that 100 students from that high school, all of them, will go to the university in that same city and have a go at things. And that, therefore, in some public university systems can mean that universities don't have an expectation of providing dorms because you're still living at home. They don't have to provide sports clubs because you go to the sports clubs that you've already been doing. They won't be helping with accommodation and those kind of things. It's not the same in every country, but in a lot of public university systems, it can be the case. In Belgium, where I used to live, you turn up on the first day of the course with your A-levels and go, like, what do you want to do? Oh, I'll have a go at medicine. Great, go and try medicine. And then you get these 50%, 60%, 70% dropout rates after the first year. but you've been to done the right diploma at school, your parents have paid tax, and you have a right to have a go. And understanding that in many countries in the public system, it is that situation where you could be in lecture halls and, with 1,000 people in there. And that's right for some students, but it's certainly not right for a lot of students. And again, if you go into a public university, they might be offering 1 or 2 courses in English. The professor may be teaching you in English, but is not used to dealing with a native speaker. The administration won't be in English, the doctors won't be in English. So the private universities, you are paying more, but it is offering a product designed in English. And I think students really need to be aware that when we talk about public and private, it's not just the cost. It's actually, there's a whole cultural difference between those two sectors.
Thank you. So we'll be opening up for questions in just a few minutes. But what I wanted to touch on is ask Sharon and Igirne, when you're hearing, when you're traveling and when you're meeting students and you do see this fear and you do hear these issues, what kind of things would you maybe suggest to them to kind of...
So, for example, as David was mentioning, public and private university, it's true, in a public university, maybe you have less support. In a private, you will get more support, but you will pay a little bit more. What we do to facilitate, and one of the points of language, parents are very worried about this. The whole institution is in English. Everybody speaks English easy. But the day you are sick, you have to see the doctor. You want to go and eat to an Indian restaurant. So the first week, we do have an introduction week. We have no class. The objective is, okay, this is the list of doctors that you can meet who speak English. This is the bank are coming on campus. You can open an account. The telephone, mobile, yeah, they come on campus, so you can buy a card, buy a phone, everything. You can do everything with your parents the first day as well. So the first week is really, you are Indian, this is the list of all the fabulous Indian restaurants that we are in town. So they are really, if something happens, they know where to go in terms of insurance, doctor, and in most of the country, you always find people, maybe not the butcher, old guy who has been here for 50 years, do not speak English. But most of the time, you will speak people, you will meet people speaking in English. And we do have the support, and that helps a lot.
Thank you. Sharon, do you have anything?
Yeah, it was the same. It was my experience as well, studying at Jacobs. We also have an orientation week, like Igirne mentioned, that they have at EHL. We also have one at Jacobs. So this means that all the staff that are on campus who are helping the students, they understand that virtually all of our students are not going to speak German. So we assist our students from visa application to permit to all these bureaucratic issues which are usually done in German, but we have English-speaking staff members who are there to help them through this process, which is actually why I was able to survive my first year there. And of course, we also offer language courses. So I believe all our institutions also offer language courses. So at least at Jacobs, like students who are not German speakers have the option to learn German, which helps them orient themselves a little bit and also talk to the locals a little bit and learn about the culture there as well.
Great. Well, there's just a few things that I've put on the slide, ideas that you might think of that Igirne and Sharon have mentioned that students will get help once they're on campus. That hopefully should give them some relief. But there's other things that students can do before making that decision. Summer schools. A year or two before applying abroad, students have the opportunity to dip their toes into the country, spend some time on a university campus, hear some classes by their faculty, meet some current students, and really get a feel for, do I see myself here? Or confirm, I definitely don't see myself here. Summer schools are great for whichever university students might apply to, and the certificates or that life experience will help when talking in an interview or even putting it on an application. But for that students who might think this is exactly what I want to do, this is exactly the university I want to go, until they step foot onto the campus, that whole idea might change. There's only so much a brochure or a website can show students. But trips to Europe, especially if your schools are teaching some of these languages, and the language group might travel abroad, or you might be doing a school trip. Again, get in touch with the universities there locally. We are, all of us are happy to host you. We want, if we're traveling abroad to see all of you, if you're coming to our back garden, we'd love to host you and show you a little bit of our country, even our campus. If you have debate clubs at school, if your students are competing in MUN, again, across universities, you can do that at an international level. It could be something smaller like family holidays where you're choosing to travel if your students are, or your children are considering applying, and just get a feel for it that way. So we have, go ahead.
I just would like to just add a last comment. It can be a bit overwhelming because we basically tell you everything is different, you have to check every single institution. We are 3 institutions here who are part of EUC, European University Consortium. We have a website, so our goal is to promote study in Europe. So we do travel. For example, we can come and visit you, the 7 universities together. That makes your life easier. But as well, if you have a doubt, a question, we are 7 European experts. So just go on the website, send us an email. I receive personally the email from the website, in case you know who is the face. If I don't have the answer, I have 6 other colleagues who I can ask. So in a couple of days, I should be able to give you an answer. So just this website is here, and this consortium is here to support you as well for studying in Europe.
Thank you. So, yes, go ahead.
So I have 2 questions. One is, if you can briefly talk about the post-study visa, work visa situation on a general level or specific to these countries. And the second is, I'm curious about non-European diversity in some of these universities. I know obviously we have a lot of within EU diversity, but Asian.
Sure.
Should I go ahead, or?
Go ahead.
Up to you.
So I can't say for sure about Germany or Switzerland or Spain or whatever, but in Germany, after you graduate from a German university, students have the option to continue studying, do their masters, and then they just switch to a different student permit. Or if they're looking for a job, they have up to 18 months after their graduation to look for a job. And during this time, they're able to live there, they're able to travel throughout the Schengen zone, they can work full time. And then once they get a job with a proper contract, they can switch their permit to the work permit. It's very easy. It's more like a formality, to be honest. So if there's no chance that you're going to be denied this, that, and the other. It's set. And what was the other one again? Diversity. At Jacobs, it's 38% of our enrollment is Asian. So we have a very large Asian student body. But I mean, bear in mind Asian as in, India, China, et cetera, not just, yeah.
For EHL, we have 30% Swiss, about 30% non-European, and 40%, is my math okay? Yeah, 40% European, excluding the Swiss.
Yep.
That's the point on the post-work study work thing I would point out. We use this term Schengen a few times, and some of you may not be entirely familiar with what that means. Schengen is actually a town in the Netherlands, I believe, and it was where a treaty was signed to do with visa-free travel. And that's actually is fundamentally important, that if your student goes to study at Jacobs in Germany, and is coming to the end of their degree, wants to go and interview for a company that's based in Madrid, what Schengen means is you don't need a new visa to travel. Once you've got into one country that is part of this Schengen agreement, you can travel to any other country. Different countries in Europe have different visa restrictions. It's not something that is European-wide. But as Sharon said, if you are studying, say, in Hungary, for example, which is actually quite a complicated situation right now with political situations, but you've got a degree there, and Hungary may not be as welcoming for you to stay, well, then you hop on a bus over to Germany and you interview for a German company, and then you're going to have the right to do it there. So there's that issues there. In terms of the diversity, I would also put in these things as well. Different countries in Europe have different legacies of different parts of the world that they have done nice or not so nice things to. As a Brit here, I say I'm sorry. But actually that has all sorts of implications in what are the other languages spoken in those countries. I live just south of a town called Leicester in the UK, and you can walk down the centre of Leicester and you will, if you speak Hindi or Gujarati or Punjabi, you're going to be as equally responded to as if you speak in English. In other countries, in Germany, it might be Turkish is more widely spoken, or Polish. In Italy, it's more likely to be Romanian or Greek. But looking at where there are potentially cultural links between that country and where it's not been so nice historically to other parts of the world, you might find...
Will it be accepted as is? or will I need that fourth year, or will I need the work ex? They can't answer the question because they don't track that.
Right.
Do you have an answer?
I mean, I would say there's complications, and mostly because actually it's a university by university policy. So, you know, I work in the UK, it's a 3-year bachelor's degrees. I have students with 3-year bachelor's degrees in the UK with US universities saying you can't do a master's because it should be a 4-year bachelor's. Whereas other universities will say, no, it's a 3-year degree, it's fine. Yeah, genuinely I've had that from a student from Oxford, being told that your 3-year bachelor's degree is not good enough to come to a university in the US. So I would say it's a university by university policy. Staying within Europe makes that easier because of the ECTS thing. But there is no hard and fast rule, I'm afraid, which is why you're going to end up with that situation transferring, because...
Did you do a
I mean, do you
webinar
have
on
any
that?
experience with students who've done it? Because nobody has an answer. And it's
Yeah.
Our students have a Bachelor University of Applied Sciences.
Yeah.
So, and we do have a lot who are applying to do a master in France, for example, a lot. For example, HEC, Paris, which is a research university, all of them have been accepted. Then, directly, with the application process and things like that. And then other university in Italy, they have been refused. So, but I would say the majority, I would say 60 to 70% have been accepted. So this is, I mean, the real life experience that I can share.
And do you know whether the US, Canada, and
It's dependent on each
It
university.
depends on the
no, I mean, do
university.
you have any experience personally with students having done that and gotten the
Yes.
We have some. Someone was accepted in Harvard, but that's one specific case.
Shikha, did you have?
I agree with David. You know, I've had cousins, nieces who want to do their masters, and whenever I reach out to universities, I've had experience with some US universities saying they're okay with that, and then again experiences with some US universities saying we're not okay with that. So it's a very university-specific thing, I think, that the research needs to happen. And you know, honestly, when the child is going at a master's level, you'll give them, probably at this point to the parents, you'll give this kind of an answer, what we'll be giving you this one-odd case study. However, it can be one is very good, by the way.
Yeah.
But they have to, at that point in time, when they're pursuing their master's, I always tell them be able to research at least and reach out to universities and take that.
Yeah, sure. So that's the reason why at this point they want to decide
Yeah, so
research or
at
apply.
this point
That's
it's a grey answer. You tell the parents that it could be and it couldn't be. And things are so flexible in this, in this arena that things can change any which way. You may be giving an answer today, but I always leave such answers open and say that, they're open to interpretation 2 years down the line.
So on the so with a research degree, there's no problem.
Again,
No,
like he
not
said,
for us.
3 years, Oxford got accepted.
No, not the UK.
Yeah.
Any other in Europe.
No, for Spain it's fine. If it's accredited in your country, we will accept that. That's if it's accredited by the Ministry of Education in the country it's been taken, we can accept it. Great. We are a minute or two over, so what I will say at this point is thank you for being here. Are you happy to stay around for any questions? And did you have a webinar on the applied science?
I'm running a webinar on study in Europe, completely free for students. I'm not supposed to say this, but if you like details, please come to it. But I'm not supposed to be selling anything, so I'll be quiet.
Please do come and ask us any questions. I know we didn't have too much time to spend, but thank you for being here today.